Happy Monday. John Lorden here with another episode of Brain Scratch, Case Cracked. This is the show where we look into an existing mystery and the critical pieces that help close that case for the authorities. Thank you so much for spending some time with me here today. This case just really grabs at my heart. What this victim went through, no person should have to go through. And I just want to give a big thank you to Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's case. This is one that I like to call Registered Nurse or Certified Devil. Every morning, Mr. Rios walked his dog, and their route past the cornfields on 92nd Street in Raymond, Wisconsin was their favorite. On July 21st, 1999, the morning sky had cleared from the rain the day before, so Mr. Rios decided to take his daughter out for that walk as well. As the group walked to the edge of town, a set of drag marks leading off into the fields drew their attention. With their curiosity piqued, they slowly walked down the ridge where the drag marks led under the power lines and into the cornfield. As they came to the end of the marks, they saw what appeared to be a discarded pile of clothes lying on the ground, but as they drew closer, they saw that it was actually a body. The poor woman, who appeared to be about 20 years old, was quite thin and without shoes. She wore a pair of black sweatpants and a gray denim western shirt embroidered with red and black flowers, all of which were still wet from the rain the night before. One of her arms laid behind her in a very unnatural position, and her body appeared to be completely covered in burns and bruises. The two made their way as quickly as possible back home, where they called police. With no purse or wallet near the body, responding officers had no idea who the woman was, and she would be referred to as the Racine County Jane Doe. An autopsy revealed signs of abuse that had gone on over a long period of time and intensified in the days leading up to her death. She endured beatings that left her with a broken nose, head trauma, broken ribs, a cauliflower ear, and also there was sexual abuse. The medical examiner gave the cause of death as homicide by sepsis pneumonia as a result of infection from injuries sustained from chronic abuse. On October 27, 1999, over 50 people would attend this poor woman's funeral. With the help of donations from the community, Racine County Jane Doe was buried 3 days later at the Holy Family Catholic Cemetery in Caledonia, Wisconsin. Her gravestone read, "Daughter Jane Doe, gone but not forgotten." In the years that followed, police never closed Jane Doe's case, and pleas were periodically made to the public for information. Through the years, multiple facial reconstructions were created and released to the public, with the last in 2012 released by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. On October 16, 2013, the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office decided to take advantage of new advances in DNA technology and exhumed Jane Doe's body to collect DNA samples. Isotope testing was then performed by a specialist from Tennessee in the hopes that they would be able to tell at least where she had lived prior to her death. 2 years later, exactly 16 years to the day that her body was discovered, Jane Doe was reinterred at Holy Family in Caledonia. When the Golden State Killer was identified in 2018, Racine County Sheriff Christopher Schmaling began to wonder if their case could be solved using genealogy DNA searches. Quote, "I see the TV commercials and wonder, if I submit her DNA, is there a family member within this country or even the world who has also input DNA and might be able to say that's the mom or that's the daughter? We are angered by the senseless and brutal murder of this young woman, and we want justice served." With this new approach, officers were able to rule out the possibility that their Jane Doe belonged to one of many missing persons cases in their state and others. However, that also meant that they had no familial DNA matches made. So this new method of cracking cases that works in so many other places, for this case, just didn't pan out. After years of failed attempts, it would only take one concerned citizen to help solve the case. On September 23, 2019, a tip was sent from Florida to the Racine County Sheriff's Office in Wisconsin. A woman in Cape Coral had called local police to say that her neighbor, Linda LaRoche, was telling people that she had killed a woman when she lived in McHenry, Illinois. She stated that she had then drove the woman across the state line to Raymond, Wisconsin, about 42 miles away. Soon, investigators were interviewing LaRoche's children. During the interviews, they learned that in 1999, the LaRoche family had a woman named Peggy Johnson living with them. Peggy was homeless and suffered from cognitive impairments, but had been offered a place to live with the family in exchange for her work as their nanny and housekeeper. LaRoche's children remembered that their mother was very abusive to Peggy, who was always sporting a new bruise or black eye. When she wasn't working for the family, she was made to stay in a crawl space under the home. At times, LaRoche was said to scream at Peggy like she was an animal. One child recalled her mother stabbing at Peggy with a pitchfork. Another recalled her slapping the poor girl repeatedly about the head. Anytime the injuries were noticed, the children were told Peggy had struck first and LaRoche was only defending herself. In November 2019, Linda LaRoche's ex-husband confirmed his children's account of events. He stated that the last time he saw Peggy, he found her lying lifeless on the ground outside their home. His wife told him that the girl had overdosed, that Linda could no longer handle her and would take her away from their house so the family would not be involved. He was instructed to take the children out for ice cream, and when they returned, LaRoche and Peggy were gone. It was another 2.5 hours before his wife came home. None of them ever saw Peggy again. Within days of wrapping up their interview with LaRoche's ex-husband, Racine County Jane Doe's remains were positively identified as that of Peggy Lynn Johnson. Amazingly, neither Peggy's name nor LaRoche's name ever came up in the initial investigation for one very simple reason. Peggy was never reported missing. Days after her identity was announced, Linda LaRoche was taken into custody in Cape Coral. She claimed that when she came home from work in July of 1999, she found Peggy standing at the kitchen counter with pills in her hands. As she yelled at the girl, asking her what she was doing, she claims Peggy quickly dumped the pills down the drain. A few moments later, she fainted, and LaRoche gathered her up and took her outside to get some fresh air. She told investigators that she didn't know what to do and briefly considered calling an ambulance for help, but in the end decided that she couldn't handle Peggy's antics anymore. She also told them that from her home in McHenry, Illinois, she then drove to Belvidere, Illinois, where she took Peggy to a gas station that had a phone booth and told her to call her grandmother. From there, supposedly, her grandmother took Peggy into her care and LaRoche never saw her again. But she was quick to change her story when investigators confronted her with the fact that they had identified and already questioned Peggy's grandmother. She stated that she had never met LaRoche. LaRoche then changed her story to admit that she didn't know who the person was that she left Peggy with, but she was very much alive when she did. During her third and final interview on November 6, 2019, LaRoche began to finally admit some of the truth. She stated that in the late 90s, she worked as a nurse for one of the area jails where she began to illegally store drugs from work under her house in a crawl space. On the last day she saw Peggy, LaRoche claimed that the girl again got into the improperly stored pills, took a handful, and then washed the rest down the drain just before she fainted. LaRoche considered calling an ambulance, but decided not to, instead opting to drive the girl over an hour away. There, she left her on the side of the road in what she called a rural area and never saw her again. Autopsy results failed to find traces of any drugs in Peggy's system. There was also another pretty big note. They saw that there was road rash all over Peggy that looked like it was extremely recent on top of all the other injuries that she had suffered. Investigators had all the pieces to the puzzle that had taken them more than 20 years to solve, and they were now confident that they knew the truth. She was born Peggy Lynn Johnson on March 4th, 1976. With a sister she didn't know and her father and brother both deceased, all Peggy had was her mother. When she was 18 years old, her mother died unexpectedly, leaving the cognitively impaired woman alone and homeless. It was then that she wandered into the clinic where Linda LaRoche worked. Instantly seeing someone that she could take advantage of, LaRoche quickly moved the girl into her home to work and live as a slave. For the next 5 years, Peggy was forced to suffer indignities that no one should ever suffer before finally dying of her injuries and left dumped in a cornfield. Linda LaRoche is facing the possibility of life in prison after being charged with first-degree intentional homicide and hiding a corpse. Sheriff Schmalling would state, quote, "The utter barbaric brutality inflicted on this young woman is something we'll never forget. She suffered from the significant injuries and had been brutalized by many means over a long period of time. Over the last 20 years, we have dedicated thousands of investigative hours to bring this heartbreaking murder to its resolution. That date has arrived today. In the coming weeks, we will be making arrangements for Peggy to be buried alongside her mother in Belvidere, Illinois, with her true identity and at some level of peace. May God bless Peggy Lynn Johnson and her family." Case cracked. I would like to give a great big thank you to Journal Times, who provided excellent coverage on this case, as well as Heavy.com, People.com, IOL News, Wikipedia, MyRacineCounty.com, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, WGNTV.com, WTMJ.com, Fox6Now.com, CBS58.com, and of course, Christy Arnhart for researching and writing up today's story. As you can see, she worked very hard dealing with multiple sources. There's something about this story that just drives me nuts. And I also did some additional research on it later and saw this point being brought up over and over by LaRoche. And that was almost that her reason for doing what she did to Peggy was because she stole my drugs. Yeah, drugs that she had actually stolen from work. It's very strange. She keeps putting that out like, oh, there's nothing we could do. She took a mouthful of pills and then she dumped my drugs down the sink. It's very, very bizarre that she thinks that's a defense for some reason. And speaking of defense, last Thursday, January 9th, LaRoche appeared in court with no attorney. She's not eligible for a public defender, probably because she has too many funds, I would imagine. But she says on top of that, she hasn't had a chance to hire her attorney yet. I think what's probably more likely true is the attorneys that she's talking to don't want to take her case when they hear the details of it. On top of all that, she is now back in Wisconsin. They did get her extradited, but they had trouble doing that. It actually took some time because in October of 2019, she had a DUI where she had a .330 blood alcohol content. That's 4 times over the legal limit. And quite honestly, that's one of the highest BACs that I've ever heard of. Just insane. So they had to kind of get those charges figured out before they would move her out of the state of Florida, which I don't know if you could say she fled there, but obviously she committed this crime, this horrible, terrible crime, and wound up jumping states sometime later. I'm also wondering if there might be more charges in this. I'm particularly concerned about the family. It seems like the family was kind of aware. Now, I don't know how old the children were, and children in abusive environments can and frequently are controlled by the person that's terrorizing the household. So I understand that. I'm a little concerned about the husband's involvement here, though, and especially someone that lived with them for such a period of time and then just disappearing. I mean, did none of the children ask, hey, where's that nanny that took care of us while we were growing up? Did the husband not talk to his wife about, well, where is she? What happened? What did you do? It's possible he did, and it's possible that she told him the same story. Yeah, I took her to a gas station and her grandma came and picked her up. But I'm just curious to see if we might see some more charges in all this. But really a big takeaway in this case for me personally is when DNA genealogy fails, we always have the basics. And a big part of those basics are caring detectives and community members that are willing to work together to help others. Thank you to new patron Sienna, and a big thank you to Garrett Morton for increasing his pledge. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do that over at www.lordandarts.com. Sign up for PayPal, sign up for Patreon, buy merchandise. It all helps keep me here doing what I love doing, spending time with you. I hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you back here on Wednesday with a bit of a doozy of a case for Searchlight. It's going to be a long episode, a lot of details, but I think it's really going to help. It's a case that had a bunch of media exposure, and then that has completely trailed off over the past few years. So I'm hoping you'll be there to help me relight the searchlight on that case. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you back here on the Lord and Arts channel.